It was a quiet morning. For most people, the mundane patterns of daily life persisted without interruption. Across the earth, from the peaks of the Himalayas to the vast, endless oceans, humans woke, worked, and wondered about their future, oblivious to the quiet, unseen war that had already begun. In the far reaches of space, a species known as the Kartok observed Earth through the eyes of their scouting ships. Their ships were invisible, their technology far beyond anything Earthlings had conceived. They saw no need to prepare. Earth was a primitive, backward place, populated by squabbling, unorganized creatures, humans. In their vast empire, the Kartok had crushed worlds with ease, civilizations no more advanced than Earth's. But what they didn't understand, what they couldn't see, was the capacity for destruction humanity harbored. A capacity born not from superior technology, but from something much more ancient, much more deadly. Total war. The first Kartok scout ship entered Earth's atmosphere without a ripple. The atmosphere was thick with pollutants, and satellite defenses had become antiquated. It was a perfect opportunity to test their new stealth tech. These things were nothing more than raindrops in an ocean to the Kartok. From their vantage point in orbit, they could see cities sprawling over continents, yet no weapon capable of even tracking them. Total defenselessness. Their arrogance was so profound that they almost felt pity for the planet. Captain Markan, the leader of this initial recon mission, scoffed as he stared at the surface through his console. "It's a wasteland," he muttered. "An easy conquest. No resistance." His lieutenant, Creel, stared at the screen, eyes narrowing. "But Captain, we should scan for any signs of unexpected technologies. The species here might have primitive defenses, but their history is full of conflict. It could be a different kind of resistance." Markan waved him off. "We've seen it all before. Primitive civilizations and their little tools. Nothing we haven't obliterated." As the scout ship moved over the Pacific Ocean, it observed quiet, peaceful islands below. From space, Earth appeared serene, unaware of the dangers closing in. Yet the Kartok were mistaken. What they didn't know was that Earth's true defense wasn't its crude weaponry or primitive systems. It wasn't even the human desire to survive, though that would be crucial in the coming fight. Earth's greatest weapon, something the Kartok had underestimated, was the mind and spirit of its people. In the heart of the United States, a military base in Nevada was bustling with activity, unaware that its efforts to combat invisible threats would soon grow more critical. General Robert Daniels paced back and forth in his command center, his eyes focused on the large screen showing routine satellite surveillance. Suddenly, an analyst in the corner muttered something under his breath. "Sir, we've picked up a strange anomaly. A ship, no, more like a series of ships, appears to be entering our atmosphere. It doesn't register on conventional radar. It's cloaked." General Daniels looked up, his brow furrowing. "What do you mean, cloaked? You're sure?" "Yes, sir. We're seeing it, but the signal's masked. It's definitely not ours, and it doesn't match anything in the database." Daniel stepped closer to the screen. "Increase the power on the range scans. Let's see if we can't break through whatever's blocking us." There was a pause as technicians scrambled, but before they could make any headway, the base's lights flickered. The power grid buzzed briefly, and alarms began to sound in the background. "General?" One of the junior officers shouted. They're coming from all sides." Back in space, the Kartok had already made their decision. Captain Markan had given the order to descend further into the atmosphere. The Earthlings were too weak to mount any meaningful defense. The Kartok believed their speed, stealth, and superior technology would cripple any attempt to retaliate. In their minds, Earth would fall in a matter of days. Yet as they moved deeper into the lower stratosphere, they noticed something strange. A flash of light erupted below. It wasn't like anything they'd encountered before. It was a shockwave, a signal of power they hadn't anticipated. The light expanded outward, blinding their sensors, overwhelming their equipment. "What is that?" Creel's voice was strained, his fingers scrambling over the controls. "It's not a weapon, but it's a signal of sorts. A kind of defiance." The world below continued its routines, but now the calm was interrupted by whispers and confusion. In moments, entire systems were disabled, communications scrambled, and military bases responded with efficiency and precision. This was when the Kartok began to realize just how wrong they had been. General Daniels, like many other leaders around the world, was a product of a society that had learned to fight with everything it had. Total war. It was not simply about victory or defeat, it was about survival. It was an unspoken truth that humans could endure the unthinkable. History, riddled with conflicts, both internal and external, had shown them the endless depths of destruction humanity could bring upon itself. In the face of annihilation there was no mercy. Only chaos. Earth, a planet thought to be defenseless, was about to reveal something far more lethal than any Kartok technology: its will to fight back. Across the world, humanity began to prepare. In the underground military bunkers of the United States, a new directive was issued: activate all protocols for Earth's defense. There is no return. Meanwhile, in the cities, individuals prepared in their own way, some arming themselves with whatever they could find, others simply deciding to leave their homes and take to the streets, knowing that the coming fight would not be confined to any one place. Governments scrambled to respond, but they didn't yet know what was coming. The Kartok, overconfident in their superiority, were blind to what was unfolding below. They thought themselves invincible, but they had never fought a war against a species like humanity. The moment the first Kartok ships touched down on Earth's surface, they would understand what it meant to be at the mercy of a civilization that had long since perfected the art of destruction: total war. This is the hook to kick off the first part of the story. The invasion of Earth begins, but the Kartok still don't understand that they've underestimated human resilience. The next section will delve deeper into the initial skirmishes and humanity's response as the full scale of the alien threat is revealed. The first Kartok ship crashed into the Utah desert, its sleek metallic form carving a path through the brittle sand. It was a controlled landing, calculated and precise. The scouts believed it would be nothing more than a strategic entry point into the world's heart. The ground vibrated slightly beneath their feet as the ship's door opened, and Captain Marcon stepped onto the barren soil. For the Kartok, their mission was simple: observe and claim. But the moment their feet touched Earth's surface, something primal stirred. The captain's highly advanced sensors were already scanning the surroundings, analyzing every particle of air. His eyes narrowed. No sign of organized resistance, he muttered, but there was something in his voice that betrayed an uneasy certainty. He had expected this. Everything from the air, the terrain, to the planet's overall fragility screamed weakness. The Kartok had conquered advanced civilizations in the blink of an eye. Earth, with its primitive technology, should have been no different. Yet this feeling gnawed at him. In the air, the sky was suddenly filled with ripples, an unnatural disturbance. The Kartok scouts failed to detect it in their initial scans, too absorbed in their superiority. But that disturbance? It wasn't natural. It was deliberate. At first, the captain thought it was just an atmospheric anomaly, perhaps a result of their ship's descent. But the pulses grew stronger. Below, in the heart of Washington, D.C., the emergency response teams went into overdrive. There had been no warning from the sky. For all their technological advancements, the human defense systems had failed to detect the alien presence. But Earth's defenses were not simply technological. They were something deeper. A response to all that had come before. General Daniels stood in front of the White House's underground command center. The screen in front of him flickered as it connected with global defense satellites, a live feed of military installations across the planet. What he saw on the screen was shocking. There was no time for mass mobilization. The Kartok had already infiltrated the atmosphere. Their ships were too fast, their cloaking technology too sophisticated for anything Earth had to counteract. But Daniels wasn't panicking. Not yet. His years of experience told him one thing. When facing an enemy that had never encountered true resistance, you had to surprise them. You had to do what they could not expect. Activate Protocol Black Sky, Daniels barked to the techs around him. A technician, eyes wide with disbelief, hesitated for just a fraction of a second. Sir, Protocol Black Sky hasn't been used since the Cold War. Daniels turned to him, his eyes hard. It's time. Do it. The technician nodded and began to type furiously, triggering a series of secretive satellite operations buried deep within Earth's defense systems. They were based on ancient, discarded methods. These were relics, now mostly forgotten, but they had been designed for a time when humanity faced an enemy that thought it could conquer Earth without hesitation. Across the world, similar movements began in silence. Cities stood still for a moment as if holding their collective breath. The Kartok had overlooked one critical detail: the unquantifiable will of humanity. The nature of its warfare had always been total, an unyielding force that could adapt and morph when survival depended on it. The Cold War era might have ended, but the human instinct to fight had never faded. It had only grown. In London, MI6 agents scrambled to decipher strange electromagnetic signals that had begun emanating from the city's outskirts. Analysts went through old files. What they found startled them. These were signals linked to classified operations, experiments that were deemed too dangerous to be used in public knowledge. Yet now it seemed like the perfect moment to activate them. Back in Washington, Daniels was already beginning to understand the scope of the threat. He turned to his team. This won't be a conventional war. Their tech is too advanced. We have to go beyond our current strategies. We need to hit them where it hurts. Their pride, their understanding of warfare. He paused, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the table. Prepare the Shadow Protocol. The Kartok had made the first fatal mistake. They assumed that Earth's previous wars had left humanity vulnerable. What they did not realize was that Earth had fought wars that stretched far beyond the physical. Humans didn't just fight their enemies, they fought themselves. And that made them uniquely dangerous. It had taken Earth centuries to understand the full ramifications of total war, and the lesson had been brutal. It was not about defeating the enemy on a battlefield, it was about overwhelming them in every possible way. It was about using everything, technology, psychology, and culture, as weapons. When the Kartok descended, they expected to face soldiers with rifles, tanks, and missiles. They didn't account for the human element, how humans pushed to the edge could create an entire war machine from the depths of their society. And the first signs of this new warfare began to emerge. Above Earth, the Kartok fleet had begun to regroup, their scouting vessels communicating with the motherships stationed in orbit. Captain Marcon felt a disturbance in the air. Something was wrong. He had expected resistance, but not at this scale. The electromagnetic pulses, Creel reported, they're growing stronger. The signals we thought were just atmospheric disturbances. They're coordinated. This isn't natural. Something is preparing for war. Marcon tightened his grip on his control panel. No matter. We'll press forward. There's nothing here that can stop us. But as he spoke those words, something shattered the silence. A brilliant flash of light erupted from the desert below, and a shockwave blasted outward with a force that rattled their ship. It was as if the Earth itself had responded to their invasion, and the Kartok realized too late that the humans had a weapon they had never considered. It wasn't just technology. It was sheer human will. Earth had something far more terrifying than the Kartok's firepower, the ability to fight in ways no invader had ever anticipated. A war not just of armies, but of cultures, of ideologies, of entire nations united against a common enemy. A total war. On the ground, the Kartok scouts were not prepared for the chaos that soon erupted. Across the world, humanity was beginning to retaliate. The first strike came from an unexpected place, an old Cold War-era bunker in Siberia, where one of Earth's most classified weapons had been dormant for decades. Once activated, the systems designed to defend against nuclear retaliation began to fire on the Kartok ships. The Kartok fleet wasn't prepared for the sheer unpredictability of human warfare. Earth had thrown them into a war they couldn't predict, a war they had never fought before. As Earth's systems hummed to life, the Kartok realized they had made a grave mistake. They thought Earth was defenseless. But humanity had just awakened something far more terrifying than they could have imagined. The Kartok fleet, once confident in their technological supremacy, now found themselves disoriented. Earth's response had been unlike anything they had experienced before. The electromagnetic pulses had been only the beginning. The vast network of military facilities around the globe had activated, deploying hidden technologies that the Kartok hadn't even known existed. It was clear, Earth had prepared for the unexpected. Captain Marcon stood at the helm of his flagship, his mind racing. He was no longer thinking of conquest, he was thinking of survival. The sudden onslaught of human countermeasures had created chaos within their ranks. Their cloaking technology was no longer effective, their communication lines had been intercepted, and a series of strikes from underground missile silos had left several of their ships damaged. And they were only just beginning to understand the magnitude of the threat. Captain, Creel's voice was tight with urgency, our fleet is sustaining damage. Their retaliation systems are unlike anything we've encountered. The shockwave from that first attack. Our ships are still feeling the residual effects. We can't remain cloaked, and we can't coordinate effectively with the motherships from this range. Marcon's gaze turned cold. Increase speed. We need to regroup. Get us back into the upper atmosphere and out of the Earth's range. But even as he spoke, the Kartok realized that retreat was no longer an option. The human ingenuity that had surprised them earlier was only escalating. From every corner of the Earth, coordinated strikes were targeting Kartok ships. The global communications grid, temporarily scrambled, was now functioning with eerie precision, guiding human forces in real time. Meanwhile, on the ground, humanity was taking the fight to the invaders in ways that left the Kartok reeling. In Moscow, the government had unveiled a contingency weapon that had been hidden in plain sight for decades. An old, decommissioned set of nuclear-powered electromagnetic pulse cannons, relics from the Cold War, now retooled and activated by a network of quantum computing systems. The Kartok sensors had failed to pick up the exact nature of these attacks until it was too late. The first pulse strike knocked out several of their cloaking ships as they passed over Eastern Europe. The Kartok responded with a full barrage of energy blasts, but each time they targeted one of Earth's major cities, the humans retaliated, quickly, efficiently, and relentlessly. In New York, civilians had become soldiers. The government had enacted a worldwide mobilization, calling upon every able-bodied citizen to defend their land. The streets buzzed with makeshift weaponry, tactical gear scavenged from old military stores, and a collective sense of purpose that bound the people of Earth together. Everyone had something to contribute. The fight for survival had erased the borders that once divided them. In the face of this invasion, the concept of nation-states was obsolete. Humanity was united by a singular drive: survival. Lena, a young tech engineer from Queens, watched in awe as a small resistance group used a repurposed drone system to disrupt one of the Kartok's control vessels. Her fingers trembled as she set up her laptop on the rooftop. She had helped design this system, but now it was being used to take down invaders from another world. "We're doing this," she whispered to herself. "This is our world." Elsewhere, in the deserts of Nevada, General Robert Daniels was coordinating the final phase of Earth's response. His eyes darted between the holographic maps displayed before him, tracking the movement of every Kartok ship in real time. He had been in command during numerous military crises, but this was something different, something far more critical than anything he had prepared for. "Sir, we have located their mothership," one of his officers reported. "It's hovering above the Pacific, still coordinating the fleet's movements. But it's vulnerable. We've pinpointed their weak spots in the energy grid. We believe if we strike now, we can disable their central command." Daniels clenched his jaw. The Kartok had underestimated Earth's resilience, and now they would pay the price. "We'll hit them with everything we've got. No mercy. We're going after their mothership." For the first time in months, Daniels felt the weight of a possible victory settle in his chest. It wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about reclaiming Earth from these invaders. Humanity was prepared to do whatever it took to win. Captain Marcon was on the verge of breaking. Despite their superior technology, despite their vast resources, the Kartok were being overwhelmed. Earth's weapons were unyielding, and the unanticipated resistance had left their ships damaged and scattered. The Earthlings were relentless. "What is this madness?" he growled. "We should have crushed them by now. We have weapons that could level entire cities, entire planets. Why is this world standing against us?" Creel stood at attention, his voice soft but insistent. "Captain, we underestimated them. This is not like any civilization we have encountered. They fight with everything, every weapon, every mind, every person. They are not just defending their world. They are fighting for their survival." Marcon's eyes blazed with anger. "Then we will give them what they want. But this time we will end it." But the Kartok had miscalculated. They had expected Earth's resistance to falter, to crumble under the weight of their superior firepower. What they hadn't realized was that Earth was not merely fighting a war of technology. Earth was fighting with the sheer force of will. Their technology may not have been as advanced, their resources not as vast, but they had something far more dangerous: an unbreakable spirit and the willingness to fight to the last breath. They understood war in a way the Kartok never would. In space, the Kartok mothership remained in orbit, its energy field flickering under the assault from Earth's combined forces. A final, desperate strike from Earth's new weapon systems, a coordinated missile barrage from secret bases in South America and Africa, hit the mothership with devastating force. The Kartok's shields flared and shattered. The flagship's internal systems overloaded, sending shockwaves through the entire fleet. The massive craft began to spiral out of control, its once impenetrable defenses now torn apart by Earth's unrelenting attack. As the mothership's main reactor began to breach, Captain Marcon realized too late that victory would not be his. He had underestimated the resolve of the planet beneath him. It was not just an invasion, it was humanity's fight for its future. And Earth was winning. The battle on the ground intensified as humans continued to push back against the invaders, armed with whatever they could find. In the final stages of the assault, General Daniels stood at the helm of Earth's final wave of counterattacks, watching as the Kartok fleet began to break apart in the sky. "This is it," Daniels said to his command team. "We're going to finish this. For Earth." From every corner of the globe, humanity's rallying cry was clear: we will not surrender. The Kartok fleet was in tatters. What had once been a powerful, seemingly invincible force was now little more than scattered debris in the sky. The mothership, once the symbol of their superiority, had been crippled by Earth's relentless assault. It was falling, spiraling toward the Pacific Ocean below. The remaining Kartok ships, now disorganized and vulnerable, tried to regroup, but Earth's response had outpaced their technology, their strategies, and their understanding of war. On the ground, a grim silence hung in the air as humanity braced for the final strike. The invaders had underestimated Earth's resolve, and now, with their forces in disarray, the tables had turned. The battle was no longer about survival, it was about reclaiming Earth. In the Pacific Ocean, the Kartok mothership was on a collision course with the ocean's surface. The once proud ship was now a battered shell, its massive energy shields flickering uselessly. Inside, Captain Marcon stood alone in the control room, staring at the rapidly approaching ocean below. His once confident voice was now hollow with disbelief. "We lost," he muttered, his mind racing with regret. "How did this happen? How could we?" Before he could finish, the ship's final moments were marked by a violent explosion as the last of the reactor's core ruptured. The shock wave from the blast sent a tidal wave crashing into the nearby shore, but the damage was done. The mothership was gone. The Kartok were no longer in control. Back on Earth, General Daniels watched the destruction unfold from his command center. The final blow had been delivered, but he knew that victory came at a steep cost. The Kartok had learned too late what total war meant. They had underestimated the human spirit, the will to fight, and the vast array of weaponry that Earth had kept hidden in the shadows. "Sir," an officer interrupted his thoughts, "we've intercepted a final transmission from the Kartok mothership. They're retreating. But some of their ships, they're trying to leave the system." Daniels was silent for a moment. The fight had been long, brutal, and costly. But Earth had prevailed. "Let them leave," Daniels finally said. "We'll make sure they never return." Across the globe, the remnants of the Kartok fleet scattered, their ships retreating into deep space, no longer the conquerors they once thought they would be. In their wake, Earth began to rebuild. The war had left scars, but it had also forged an unbreakable bond between nations, a unity born of survival. The alien invaders had thought Earth was defenseless. They had thought that they could break the human will. But they were wrong. As the Kartok fleet disappeared into the blackness of space, humanity celebrated a victory not just of arms but of spirit. The world had stood together. And in that unity, humanity had discovered something far more powerful than advanced technology, far more lethal than superior firepower: the power of will. In the aftermath of the war, humanity turned its gaze to the future. The alien invasion had taught them many things, things they would carry with them forever. They had learned that when faced with extinction, humanity's capacity to unite, to adapt, and to survive was unrivaled. Governments and militaries across the world began to work together in the wake of the Kartok invasion, building a new global alliance. The old systems of division, once so ingrained, began to fade as new treaties were signed, new alliances forged, and Earth's defenses grew stronger. No longer would Earth be an isolated collection of nations, but a united force prepared for any challenge that might arise. In Washington, General Daniels stood on the steps of the White House, watching the sunrise. It was a new day, a day that marked the dawn of humanity's new era. The scars of the war would never disappear, but the lessons learned would ensure that humanity would never again be caught unprepared. Total war, Daniels said quietly to himself, isn't about weapons. It's about fighting with everything you have. Everything. He smiled grimly, his gaze shifting toward the horizon. And we fought with everything. In space, as the last Kartok ship left Earth's orbit, Captain Marcon's final thoughts were consumed by the overwhelming realization of what they had just witnessed. The planet they had considered weak, fragile, and unprepared had thrown everything they had into a battle for survival. And despite all their technology, all their power, they had failed. The Kartok would leave this world, but they would never forget the taste of defeat. As the months passed, Earth's systems of defense grew more sophisticated. The humans understood now that their true weapon was not just in the power they wielded, but in the strength of their will to fight, to adapt, and to overcome. New technologies emerged from the ruins of war, and humanity began to venture beyond their planet with the knowledge that they could survive anything. But the Kartok knew the truth now. They had learned what total war meant. They had learned the cost of underestimating the human spirit. And as Earth prepared for a future no longer shaped by fear, humanity knew that their world was no longer defenseless. Earth had fought. Earth had won. And Earth would never be the same again.